Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Lauri Stern. Join me as I invite experts and friends to discuss a range of topics, from the factual and practical to the mystical and magical. Consider this your virtual happy hour filled with lively, authentic, and meaningful conversations meant to inform, inspire, and ignite your curiosity. Whether you are very real or super woo, this podcast is just for you. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Lauri Stern, and everybody knows by now it's Lauri like Atari, not Lori like story. I have to get that out there. I just had a podcast with a friend of mine who knows better, and all the way up until the point I had to stop and say, okay, I got to call you out on it. It was just my recent episode. So just so you know, I'm with the lovely and amazing and wonderful Julie Jancius, the angel medium. Welcome, Julie. Hello.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lauri. It's wonderful to be here.
It is amazing you're here. You don't know this, but I was going back through just my own research on how I found you. And I can't even tell you really when exactly, but it was sometime over the pandemic. I want to say it was 2021 or before. And it was this whole sort of maze of, somebody told me to listen to this podcast, which had me listening to this podcast and so on and so forth. And we're all connected, right? So I don't remember how I found you. I'm so glad I found you. And I have since been graciously, I've joined your spiritual women's tribe. I have my own Facebook page here. We can talk about that. And, I've got your text. So it's and she answers me. And I know you're so busy. You've got books you've written. You've got these in-person retreats that you're putting on. And I know you're so excited about it. We're going to get to that. But for everybody out there, Julie is an angel medium. And so your whole lens is angels. And I know you do it, or you started it through Reiki, right? And I love on your show, you talk about your journey with Reiki because we connect on that. I had a reading with a medium and I told you I've had readings with you. And she popped out of her chair and said, Reiki 1, Reiki 2, Reiki 1, Reiki 2. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I got into it. And then listening to your journey and how you sort of you've made it your own because you struggled with, I'm supposed to be quiet, but these people are coming. I see angels and they're talking to me. Am I supposed to say something? So do you want to talk about, I know your hairbrush story. I know when you first started hearing spirit with your father before you even knew he was gone. That's amazing. So maybe start there and then just kind of tell my listeners, because we really connect on creating our own secret sauce and own blend of honoring traditions, learning those traditions, and then learning how those traditions in our own bodies can translate and heal others in our unique way. And I love that. So take it away, like you say on your show. Take it away, Julie.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. So I think what I would say to that first and foremost is we honor the traditions that are working for humanity and we release the traditions that are no longer working for humanity. And there are a lot of traditions that just don't work for everyone. So I didn't get started first with the energy healing. I don't even know if I've even had this conversation with folks. I actually got started with the mediumship first. So my dad passed, and for a number of reasons, we weren't talking. I just kind of held my values and just had to kind of disconnect from him for a time. And while we were disconnected, he passed away from a heart attack at age 59. And I didn't know my name had changed. And so nobody had a way to kind of track us down. And so when I got up in the morning, every morning to brush my daughter's hair, I kept hearing this voice inside my head. And it sounded like my own internal dialogue. And it would say, she needs a hairbrush like I use. She needs a hairbrush like I use. So I'm sitting here brushing my kiddo's hair with this big old black paddle brush and hearing this every single time over and over again. And it started to click. This isn't me. I don't know who this is, but it sounds like me within my own head. So I must be going crazy. Something that I've never told anybody is around the time when my dad passed too, I kept thinking about his new family and almost kind of looking up their page on Facebook.
We call that stalking,
Yes, right? Uh, yeah, cyber
but
stalking.
it's all necessary stalking.
But I felt that call within to, like, reach out to them. But again, that pride came in, like, "No, no, I'm gonna wait for my dad to reach out to me." That's kinda like his family, off bounds. And so fast forward an entire month after this voice started speaking within my mind, I get a call at work that my dad's passed, and I get this vision of him combing my hair using a hairbrush that I hadn't thought about in decades, which was so like the hairbrush. I've never seen anybody else use it. It's a brown wooden handle with these boars like bristles. And that's how spirit's messages work. They're always very unique to get that validation across. And I knew, like I knew within my heart, oh my God, my dad's been talking to me. And so I started working with mediums to understand how I was even hearing him. 'Cause that's crazy.
Right. Right. Yeah. We connect on that in so many ways. My father also passed away suddenly from a heart attack at 61. And yeah, I think I've shared this with you. I had always been afraid as a child that he would die of a heart attack. I can look back now and say I was always intuitive. That's how he's going to die. Right. My fear was he was a big guy. He didn't always take care of his diet. So it would make sense that a man that size with that much anger or energy may have a heart attack. And he had been ignoring signs. So we came to find out after he passed. But the day he passed, I was at work and I was having just a really shitty day at work. And often when I'd have a shitty day at work, I'd call my dad because he'd be like, give him hell, honey, tell those those MFs to go take a jump in the lake or whatever colorful language he used. And I was having such a bad day, and I called my dad and I got his answering machine.
Mm.
And my first thought was, I better hang on to this. What if this is the last thing I ever hear from my dad? And then I immediately jumped inside my own self to say, who thinks that? Like, who hears a message and thinks such a terrible thought? Like, what if this is the last I ever hear of my dad? Who does that? And I was exhausted. And the whole train ride home, I was teaching aerobics at the time, so I had to take the L home from the city. The whole ride home, I was so tired. I fell asleep and I almost missed my stop. And I get up and I run into my apartment, and we had a cocker spaniel at the time, and we had to take the dog out. And I was supposed to change for this class. I taught aerobics at 7 o'clock. My husband was on call. He was in residency. And, of course, there's no accidents. I'm completely naked at this point because I'm supposed to change. And the phone rings and it's my sister. And like, I got to go. I got to go teach my class. She's like, you haven't heard. So then you start, right? It's my grandma. It's my grandpa. My aunt had cancer. And I'm going down the litany of, oh, what happened to this one? And she's like, no, Laurie, dad died today. And it was like this tunnel vision. And anyway, so yeah, so I felt like I had a knowing before I knew it. And I'd like to talk about, you say a lot, like it always just makes my heart feel so good when you say it, because that is when we're in that zone, how it feels. Can you tell us, now that you've done this work so much, and I know you teach others, how do you describe to your students when they are there? Like, I know we have our ego mind and then we have our knowing. Like, it's just really coming from spirit, and how to really understand the difference. Do you tell them how to feel it or hear it, or can you talk about that?
It's really a process. So I know that you haven't been through the angel Reiki school yet. I hope that you do one day come through it because you'll see just like the system of how it works. But when my dad passed, was a journalist, right? Like that's my background. I have a lot of extensive journalistic training and did that for a long time in my life. And so I'm just a naturally very curious person and I like to have conversations. And so when I got into working with mediums, I didn't get all of the puzzle pieces that that put it together. It was like, yeah, okay, this makes sense. But then why is this piece happening over here? Why do I feel this? Why am I able to feel other people's feelings? Why am I able to, just be able to say things and they know exactly what I'm talking about? And it's not related to another person on the other side and it's not psychic information. It's just I can be with another person and everything starts pouring through. And so I started to kind of navigate this as I was working on other people, working with different mediums. And then it led me to other trainings. So, yeah, I went through a very intensive in person 6 month energy healing training. I did another Reiki training because sometimes when you work with different teachers, some teachers are good at teaching and some are more good at kind of doing the work themselves. So I found that spirit was kind of having me be led to the people that I needed because all of them had these different puzzle pieces. So I went through maybe 3 or 4 different certification programs over the course of maybe 2.5 years. And got to the end and I'm like, okay, spirit, how do you want me to use this? And they're like, well, you're going to start out working with people one on one. Great. I had seen that, but you're also going to teach people how to do this. And so I sat down one day and I just find that when something's being channeled through, you could sit down and get done like 3 weeks or 6 months worth of work, like in 2 or 3 days. And that's what happened. I sat down and I channeled out the Angel Reiki school. And it was like, oh, if you put this together from this program and this together from this program, and if you understand the concepts of Yasui from back in the day with this piece over here and the history of it all, oh my gosh, A plus B equals C. And so I created a 4 part program that really walks people through energy is the language of the universe. And once you understand energy itself, you can open yourself up to this dimension, this portal of, oh, and there are angels right at our sides all of the time. And our loved ones, your dad is at your beck and call all the time. They are all a part of your spirit team, that God universe source energy too. And you can tap into it. And from there, you can I lead my students to understand what is that spirit team trying to communicate and who's bringing through the message on each topic. And so that's what we go into within the program. And we have 100% success rate, graduation rate. And we've had I think close to 600 people come through the program so far.
It's amazing. You're like, you're on your way to being like the Taylor Swift and, like making a difference in the world, right? Let's hope that we can get there. I was listening to your podcast yesterday with the Astro Twins, and there's so many nuggets in it. I could spend the whole podcast talking about all the episodes I've loved through the years, listening to you. And I've texted you through those years, and I've said, oh, there's a hawk again. Every time I get on the podcast with you, there's hawks flying all around. And I'm like, I love it so much and it's great. And your voice is just so sweet. It's not like sugar, it's like cotton candy. It's just like so inviting and genuine and authentic. And your enthusiasm for this work really shines through truly in everything that you do. And I know that you're running a business. Okay. And, there's that balance between how many emails do you really need to send people? And I know you struggle with the social media because that's not your number. I was listening yesterday. I was fascinated because I've done human design and I was waiting for her to say yesterday. So this podcast, her name's Ophi. Is that who it is? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and what did she read for you? Your astro, what's it called?
She created a new system with Astrology
Thank
Advantage.
you. And so you got those two numbers and it kind of gave you your paradigm, right? And your archetype. And so human design, I think you've had yours read too. I'm an emotional projector. I'm a 6'4". And the thing that really kicks me in the butt about that is I'm supposed to wait to be invited. I'm like, well, that's a crock of shit. I never wait for anything. I just, do what I want to do when I want to do it. And then my teacher said, well, how does that work for you? And in fact, when I'm invited, it works out a lot better. I have all these great ideas, like I want to do this workshop and I want to go here and I want to go there. And it's like when I do that in that way, it works or it doesn't work. And so I'm saying to everybody out there, please invite me to be your teacher in any way that I can. Open invitation. But yeah, so the Reiki part intrigues me because so is it hands-on and mediumship? Is it like how, without giving anything away for free, obviously, because it's your business, but in my mind, are you taught to use your hands like traditional Reiki first?
It's interesting because I started the program way before COVID, and I would run it completely in person, like a hotel conference room, right? Or conference center. And when we would do it in person, it was all hands on. And I've done so many Zoom sessions for 8 years now with people in Spain and Australia and China and just everywhere. And I can tell you that everybody everywhere can get an amazing session via distance. You don't have to be in person. But when you're learning, when we went through COVID, I moved everything online. And that's where we've had the majority of people come through is the 8-week online Angel Reiki School. Everybody gets the exact same thing, whether you're in person or online. Energy is energy. We're sitting here right now on Zoom. We're face to face seeing each other, but we're not next to one another with our physical bodies. And yet I can feel your heart and I can feel your energy and I just can feel your energy radiating through your auric field and you're just glowing and sending so much love to your audience, right? So it doesn't
Okay.
have to be where we're right next to each other. You can learn the hand arrangements, you can learn how everything works through distance and still get the exact same value out of it. What I believe is that it is the teacher first and foremost. And absolutely everything is a business, but the intention is always the client and the maximum quality for the client and just the human being interaction between my heart and my students that they get as much as possible. The other thing is what I believe from all the programs that I've been through is everybody has very, very unique spiritual gifts. So in the Angel Reiki School, we don't just talk about mediumship or energy healing or angels. It's also some people have the gift of past lives coming through. Some people are animal communicators. Some people are medical intuitives. And when you go through programs, it should help bring all of that out of you. And if you're working with a really great teacher, it's going to help you develop your unique skills as you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And again, like just I was on my bike yesterday, which is often where I am or I'm walking when I'm listening to podcasts. And it's also how I get my biggest downloads. So what happens is I'll be listening to your podcast and I'll have to stop my bike and like make notes. And I made notes for today, for example, because you guys are talking about no surprise, no coincidence, so many themes that are coming up. And this week, quite frankly, I was very triggered. I write also. I consider myself Grammar Gertrude, which is just a funny thing. But I find in this industry, you and I and several others come at it, and even the people that start out, I would hope, come at it from the best of intention, right? Somebody told me today there was some major psychic that was just arrested in New York. I don't know who this person is. Did you hear that?
No.
Yeah, some major psychic was just arrested for like fraud and nastiness today.
Oh, no.
And so, we're human too, right? And so the difficulty I find and what's so triggering is just like any other industry. Fortunately, unfortunately, I feel like the healing industry has kind of been hijacked a little bit by the algorithms and, how many Instagram followers do you have? And it's all about the numbers and how many email people do you have? You and I have talked about being published and the game of the numbers in my knowing, people would say to me, well, you're really naive. You have no idea what you're talking about. And also, it's
Mhm.
true. I'm a unicorn.
Mhm.
I would like to believe that just like your guest said, we know where we want to be. We know we're already there. Everybody else just needs to catch up. And so in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to get in the mud with these, the pigs, let's say, because they enjoy getting dirty. If I spent my time worrying about how many followers I have, how many email, numbers I'm getting or whatever, I'd be lost. My hope is that the right people at the right time, literally, and they do come to me or I find them, and those of us who really want to elevate consciousness are just doing our craft and allowing society to catch up. Because what happened this week was I was reading somebody's post and these phrases about creating a container and holding safe space. If I hear that one more freaking time, what kind of container are you holding, babe? Like, is it a big container? Is it a garbage can? Like, where did these phrases come from? I'm creating a container and I'm holding safe space. And I was just working with my mentor before I got on this call with you. And she really shifted it for me, right? In my mind, when I read something like that, I'm a healer who's supposed to hold your shit in me so you can do your work. Obviously, we talk about boundaries. But the way she traded that was no, I hold my safe space. And when I hold my safe space, it allows you to work on yours and find yours. And then I guess the container is we just come together and collaborate on this work. But these catchphrases and this numbers game, you're right in the thick of it because you're trying to get another book published. So, but I just loved your guest yesterday, seems to be of the same mindset. Like, she's doing her thing. She's created her secret sauce between her combo of modalities, which is what I'm doing, which is what you're doing. And so I know you have a book that you might want to talk about that journey. And I know you're so excited to finally get back in person with people. So I wanted to have you on today because you've got your workshops coming up. So before we get down into other questions, I'm going to let you take the floor and talk about you and your business and the stuff you have coming up.
So I think that what you're talking about, we want to separate out into two different things, right? Because the first thing is like I have a membership, right? And when people come into the membership, there's dozens of courses I've done, dozens of workshops, healings, everything that they can get access to all at once in the membership. And when somebody comes in and we have hundreds of members, they are coming from all different places. One woman just lost her 18-year-old son. Another woman just lost her husband in a tragedy last December. There are so many different things that are happening to people. And I think that when people say, I'm creating a container in this safe space, there's a couple things that can happen within the spiritual community that I think it's good for all people, especially teachers, to keep their eye on, where some people try and they don't try, they have the best intentions, but they kind of gobble up all of the attention within Zoom meetings or different things. And when you create a safe container, you're not really allowing anybody else's energy to kind of steamroll anybody else because we're all human beings. And I think that that human heart to heart connection is one of the deepest reasons that we're here on this planet. And so when I hear that, it just signals to me that that teacher is really trying to create a space that is safe for every single person and the different reasons that they want to work with that teacher. At the same time, you're also talking about the numbers, which I totally get. And what happens is when you create a successful business or an online something or other, or I think people call themselves influencers over on social media, and it starts to take off. I think a lot of people think to themselves, oh, well, I don't know a lot about business. And that's where a lot of other folks start to come in and get in your ear like, well, you really need to know this and you need to know this if your business is going to continue to be successful. However, what Spirit says all the time is you got yourself to that point. And yes, there is a little bit of good business knowledge out here, a little bit over there. But really, what it comes down to is Spirit is going to show you the way. And I'll give you an example. So I got this I was praying one day, okay? And Spirit goes,
Just one day, Julie?
oh, every morning, every morning. And Spirit goes, we need you to have set up another in-person angel Reiki school this fall. And I said, okay, no problem. And I sat down to like write out emails to communicate, hey, we have this thing that we're doing. If anybody is interested, come join us. And it just didn't feel right. Like who, what, when, where, why, how, like writing it out, the typical marketing fashion has never felt right to me. So I said, Spirit, this just doesn't feel good. Obviously, I need people to understand that we're hosting an event, but how can I communicate this to them in just a very heartfelt, deeper way? And Spirit goes, get out your laptop. I go, okay. And they said, write out these list of questions. I said, okay. So I wrote them, typed them out. They said, now go back and channel our answers to each one. And those are
Mm,
your emails that you're going to be sending out to your community. And what Spirit's been saying a lot more is kind of how they need people to weed through all of the noise and distraction is stop looking at people like they're experts just because they're saying that they're experts. They're
mhm.
not. You
Right.
have an intuition within you. And if you just do one thing in this lifetime, develop that intuition and really learn to have confidence in it, to trust it, it will lead you every step of every minute of your entire life. And you'll get to a
Mhm.
place when you're 105 where you look back over your life and if you follow that intuition every step, you won't have any regrets. And that's what it comes down to. So I completely agree with you. There's a lot that just feels so fake to me within the spiritual community. I don't like it. You also have a lot of people that build up businesses where they have teams of 30 people. I know one person I know who has 100 people on her team, and they get to a point where they have to make payroll. And
Yeah.
so they're spiritual teachers, but they have to make payroll. And so they have to sell you a certain amount. And I think that's where the lines are getting very, very sticky. Just to
Yeah.
kind of be devil's advocate, though, too, I'm looking at this from multiple different perspectives. And
I do too.
yeah, I got the blessing recently of interviewing there's 2 people, and I won't say their names, and you'll understand why here in a second. There's 2 gentlemen who really impacted my spiritual journey more than anything else. And I've read all of their works. I've listened to them for over a decade, if not multiple decades. And one, I looked back in preparing for an interview, did tons and tons of publicity, right? Like he hired a I don't know what you call those people, marketing people to get his name out there, his books out there. And because he did that, his message spread like wildfire. And I think that that had a great shift and caused a great awakening. And the other person's books and works, if you really dive into what they're both doing, the other person's writing is better, his message is better, the information is just so much more rich and deep. But he didn't do any marketing. He didn't do
Mhm.
any PR. And because of that, his reach was dismal compared to the other person. And so I think that it could be possible that spirit comes in through so many different people and calls some to create that massive reach, to reach more souls, and doesn't for others to keep both people in their happy place within their own energy. And it just kind of is what it is. However, from a lower, I don't know what you want to call it, from a spiritual perspective of like the outside looking in, it's easy for all of us to judge and be like, why is this person doing this? And why is this person doing this? It's all spirit led. And I think the way that we need to just stay true to ourselves is to really stay present, stay in oneness and alignment with your own energy and what feels right and wrong, like what resonates for you. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, it does. You channel, you see angels, you hear from spirit. So there's 2 sides. One is, do you have a philosophy slash responsibility as this person when you're, for example, at the grocery store, right? I know we know lots of mediums out there who are on TV who will just kind of go up to somebody at the grocery store and say, I see your dead grandma, blah, blah, blah. She says she loves you. Okay. And then there's other people out there who will say, I would never do that. That is, I'm not invited to do it. I don't think that's responsible. Okay. So I kind of wanted to ask you about, like, do you have a thought on that? It's right. It's not right or wrong. I just curious to know, like, what your path is when you go to the grocery store. Do you surround and ground and shield, or do you like go up to people and surprise them unsolicitedly? Um, and right, and how, do you feel like you bear a responsibility, in terms of this industry? Let's just go ahead and answer that one, and I'll come back to another question.
Okay, I know exactly who you're talking about, and if you go back and watch the first season, the very first episode of the very first season, there is something that they should have edited out, but they didn't, where the daughter in the grocery store goes, "Come on, mom, we've been here for like 6 hours or 4 hours," or whatever it is.
Uh,
What most people don't see, because I've been involved in trying to get a TV show up and off the ground, is that when they record, they're recording for as long as they need to get the best 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes of content. So if they need to be in that grocery store for 4 hours, 6 hours, they will. That's not real life. And so you have a lot of people coming in to become mediums, healers, intuitives, and thinking to themselves, why doesn't my gift work exactly like the people on TVs? Because they have producers behind the scenes who are just capturing the best 6 minutes out of 3 hours. Now, if you had people recording you, right, for 3 hours, anybody could get a great 3, 6, 10 minutes from you. That's one thing. Is it ethical? Absolutely. Like you said, when it comes to human design, some people wait for the invitation. Some people are just out there, go do it, right? Like that is me. A download comes in, I have to give it. Otherwise, for me, when messages come in, my mind space can't focus in on anything else until the message comes through. So Spirit's saying to tell this story. When COVID first happened, there was a sheriff deputy down in Florida who passed away. And I read this story in People magazine online, and I felt him coming through in a way that I hadn't felt reading any other news article, where he kept asking me to get a hold of his partner, um, husband partner. And I said, that's not an ethical thing for me to do. Like, I will absolutely give him a free session, but you have to have him reach out to me and I will give the session. And then I left it alone, but I couldn't really focus the rest of the day. So I remember it was like a Sunday, and I was cleaning around the house, and I went to go check my email. And this man's husband had sent me an email just a
mm.
couple hours later. And I remembered his name from People magazine. So I called him and I said, "You're never going to believe this, but he wants us to do this session." So we're both looking at our calendars, and my calendar is just booked for 3 weeks straight. And I hear his partner in heaven going, "I am not leaving your brain, Julie, until you give this reading." So I stopped him and I was like, "I'm not going to be able to do anything else for these 3 weeks. Can we just do the session right here and right now? Like, my kid's out of the
Mm.
house, my husband's out of the house. I feel like he set this up perfectly." So I ended up just doing the session right then and there. And then I was able to go back into my life. So there are those who, yes, it does happen. The first time I think it happened at Subway for me, where the young man behind the counter making my sandwich, his dad was on the other side, and I couldn't not bring through those messages. It happened at TJ Maxx one day when a woman was helping me. It just happens whenever Portillo's, you're Chicagoan,
Yeah.
wherever you are,
Yeah.
like it can come through. And I carry cards now though that just say like 20-minute free reading, so that if people have work happening, I don't want to make them cry. I just give them a gift
Hmm.
card and I say, if you want a free reading and if you want to know the messages coming through, give me a buzz and we'll we'll do a reading for
I
you.
love that.
Yeah.
Studios now, I teach yoga, and studios now have these cards, it's kind of like Fogo de Chao, green for more, red for stop. And so you're supposed to like have a card if you want adjustments and a no if you don't. And half the time people forget. So I just always ask, if you don't know who I am, I'm a big adjuster, raise your hand if you'd like no adjustments. I have them in child's pose so nobody like sees who's raising a hand. So I create that safe space there. you know and I loved to go back though. I loved how you described the container. I don't mean to be like a naysayer, but it just for whatever reason it triggered. I know for why it triggered me, and I worked on that with my journaling and my teacher too. The trigger was, in my opinion, and I shoot my own self in the foot when I'm in this comparison mode, which is again hard not to do because we're living this life and we're all out there. When I'm comparing myself to others, that's really not in alignment, right? And then my knowing comes in. It's like, okay, you've gone down the crazy train. Let's get back to center. Send them love and gratitude for who they are. Just have love and gratitude for who you are. So here's the story. You opened up the line of communication for the Angel Reiki School, and I was about to hit send a couple of times. And I've been on the calls with you, and for whatever reason, I know now, I didn't hit send at the time. And I was so afraid of disappointing you because I really adore you. And I know that's not where you come from at all. I'm just telling you. And, but what ended up happening was, I don't think you know this story. So we were on a group call. So Julie she has this grand vision. A few years ago, you started it. You wanted to do these spiritual, you said spirit woke you up in the middle of the night. That You wanted all these Facebook groups to form. Okay. And this is where I got the chills because I was on my walk and I was listening to your podcast. I wear this intention stick. The episode with Scott and Marla Berger just came out last week. This is all about oneness. And my goal for them is to have global meditations with everyone who owns one of these to be in group together at the same time, meditating at the same time. Okay, so that's going to happen. I know it. But while I'm thinking about this, you on your podcast said out loud, I want to have a global community. And I'm like, oh my God, it's all about the oneness. And I was crying and I texted you right away. And I'm like, sign me up, sign me up. So we were on the Zoom call with the group leaders or whatever. And Janessa was there, Janessa Tallman. Okay. And she had volunteered to help you organize the calendar and the meeting schedule because that's what she does. And she had gone through your Angel Reiki school. And I had an offline conversation with her, and she ended up being my business mentor. And she ended up being the one who built my website. And in conversation with her, I was sharing, I'm like, oh, I feel so guilty a little bit. Like, I met you through Julie and I met you because I was going to sign up for her. And then I signed up for you. And then I stopped and I giggled and I was like, oh my gosh, that's how spirit works. I wasn't meant to work with Julie right now. I was meant to work with Julie to find you right now. And it was just amazing how that worked out. So, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And that's how it works out. That's what I love about listening to all the ways that your listeners and the guests you have on, they always circle back to the dots that connect, that lead us down this path, right? With faith and trust. And we don't know in the moment why we don't hit send, right? We just can look back and say, oh, that makes sense, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So COVID happened, and then you had to get your hands off people. And now that it's over, you're about to have this in person retreat. So please tell everybody about that. And you're so excited about it. And I can't do it this time around, but I know you have another one coming up in spring. So plug it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that that's beautiful. I think that, when you feel called, it's just right. And different people can show you different things. So, what I teach people is certifying them in mediumship, energy healing, and how to be an angel messenger all at once. And we're doing that in November 8th, 9th, and 10th in Oak Brook, Illinois. Have to keep it close to home because it takes about 3 SUV worth of like truckloads to bring over all of the tables and just equipment and everything that we need. But then, yeah, we're going to do it again here in April of 2025. And hopefully do it every fall and every spring in person, but it's really there to help you build all of your spiritual gifts to the max. And then I think the other thing that is kind of missing within a lot of programs is you do have to figure out how to make your business sustainable. You do have to understand how to build a clientele. There are a lot of people who have businesses out there, but they want to transition from working full time to doing their spiritual business full time. And there is a way to do that. So I teach people the method that I used and give them the blueprint that I used, which they can kind of transition into their own work.
Yeah, I love that. It's great. I mean, just everything you offer, and just like you said, you're going to offer whatever it is you offer, and how people end up embodying that is up to them. What came up yesterday also while listening to your podcast is, my lens is chakras, right? So the comparison train that I get on sometimes is, someone like you, when you started Reiki, you started seeing angels. And so I was like, oh, is that what's going to happen for me? And then of course that doesn't happen. I get messages in other ways. I see auras, I see colors, and I just get like intuitive hits that I'm practicing honing, right? And figuring out. So in the way of the chakras, when your chakras are in alignment, it's just what you're saying, you become this conduit of messages. How do you trust your gut? How do you trust your intuition? Well, if you've got a blockage in your gut, then you're not going to have that clear channel. It's like having a kink in your water hose. And I'm going to put you on the spot for just a second here when I mention this, because I know you talk about your throat issues. And I want to ask you if you have done any work on your sacral chakra, which is your seat of creativity and how you express your passions, right? And have you thought about that connection, because the second chakra is connected to the fifth? So when you've got your throat stuff happening, can you look back and say you were sort of stifling your creativity or not expressing your sensuality, sexuality, passions? I just kind of wanted it came to me yesterday, and I'm like, I wonder if she'll be okay with me asking her this, but I'm asking you.
Yeah. I think it's a great question. Yeah, I've done a ton of work in all different areas, psychology, like with therapists, just all different types of healers and healing, a lot of work with the chakras. And I totally hear you, but I feel clear in all of that. They had to do a shot into my throat in order to numb it and scope down there. And it's the way that my dad had spoken. It's actually the way that my mom had spoken. They both have very kind of softer, lighter voices. And I don't use the same mechanisms with speaking. Like when you actually physically look at the anatomy within my throat, I don't close my vocal cords all of the way. And so I use a muscle in the back of my throat to make the sound. I always have. And I tried to learn how to do it differently. You almost have to learn how to breathe different when working with a speech therapist and a vocal coach. It's very hard work there, but it's actually the anatomy. If you look in there physically, that's what's happening. Yeah.
Wow. I'm so glad you're like figuring it out, first of all. Second of all, I love that you went down the healing modality path to try to figure it out, right? And so it's funny, I'm married to a doctor, and he'll say, like, well, there's a pill sometimes you need, there's a shot sometimes you need. Of course, of course. And the energetics of it, you and I think would agree that there's value in that. And I think you said it on one of your podcasts too, like you were having some sort of throat issue cropping up around your grandma, and then something after that fact, it like cleared your throat. And I can't remember the story, but it was almost like there was an energetic block at that time, not an anatomical, that you figured out and it cleared.
Yeah, I have a lot to do with my grandma. I was just thinking about this morning. I think that it's really interesting when it comes to our lineages. My grandma's mother, my great great grandmother, passed away when she was very young, just about 12 years old. And she had all older brothers. So she had to step up and be the woman of the household, do all of the cleaning. But it's interesting. I identify a lot with her mom and her mom's mom, my Grandma Molly. And I've done a lot of ancestral trauma work, lineage work back into those lines. And it's interesting because I almost feel like part of my grandma Molly and my grandma's mom, great grandmother, I almost feel like I have part of their souls within me in this lifetime. And I think that's where a lot of my closeness with my grandmother comes in. But just trying to heal that has been a lot of intensive work.
Yes. I think maybe that was the episode you were discussing the ancestral clearing that you had done. And at that point, whatever was going on with your throat seemed to lessen, I think from learning about that, which is what happens too. Like I said, there's a balance between East and West. This show is called The Real and the Woo, right? It's all in balance. If we stay too stuck in one side or the other, it's like a chair with three legs. It just can't balance well. And so we seek the treatment that obviously, if there's something medically wrong with you, of course, you're going to see a doctor. You need to see a doctor. Please see a doctor. And while you're doing that work, it's fine to travel down other channels as well, right? Whatever choice is yours. In that way of the real part of this show, I was going to ask you, because who you are, and I think people would say, oh, she's so woo woo woo. How would you describe yourself in a real way that people might not know how real you are?
Oh, I drive the same car that I did before the business took off and became successful. I would just love to spend all of my time being mama and wife, not in like a trad wife type of way. I'm totally against that, goes against every fiber of my being, but just my daughter's in this period where she's 13. I cannot believe that these first 13 years went as fast as they did. I only have 8 years with her while she's home. I just wanna enjoy every single moment. So, if that's finding, like, recipes on TikTok or making goofy videos together or, she's in this play at school and she has to wear this blonde wig, and we got the wig and, I called my bestie who's a hairdresser, and I said, "The wig's bangs are in her eyes. Can we just take it over? Can we take the wig over to the salon and have you trim the bangs?" So, it's so funny because we live in a nice community in Chicagoland, but it feels like a small community, and I go in and there's my friend, and she's like, "What is happening? Why are you holding a wig?" And I'm like, "Well, elle's in the school play, like, we gotta get the bangs
Yeah.
trimmed." And they turned out beautifully. So, and taking care of my dogs. Oh my gosh, I have 2 beautiful little Shih Tzu puppies, and
No.
they're not puppies, 8 and 9 years old, but I spend all day letting them in and out and covering them with blankets when they're cold and taking their little
No.
jackets off when they're warm. That's me.
I love that. I love that. And now it's time for Joy on the Fives. So, Julie Jancius, in this moment, what is bringing you joy?
Diving into some books that are taking me deeper to within myself. I think if I could spend every single Friday night in a Borders bookstore, there aren't many of them left, but that is my happy place. And I'm working on a third book right now. And I just am so eager every morning to get up and work on it and to finish this book because it's just been unlike any other experience. I knew I was going to write it. I knew that it would pour out, but I didn't know how fast it would pour out. And literally within just a couple of days, I got 30,000 words down, which is half of a book. And of course, you got to go back and edit and everything. But just getting it out in the first place has been such a joy.
I'm so glad to hear that. The listeners know I have a segment in my show called Joy on the Fives because, like you with your spiritual Facebook page, my friends with their intention necklace, I want to create and I envision a world where when we break for the news, weather, and the traffic on the fives, like you're watching the Today Show and there's the news and the weather and the traffic. Imagine a world that would include joy in
Yeah,
that.
beautiful.
And just everybody listening, just pause whenever you hear this podcast and just ask yourself, what's bringing you joy? And it's like a muscle that we exercise like any other. And if you're not used to finding it or feeling like you're worth it, I have a chakra for that. Julie's got some medicine for that too. And the point is when you practice it, it's a practice, you cultivate more. So that's my hope for humanity is that, we inspire people to find more joy,
Beautiful.
even if they think they can't find it. Yeah, thanks. So before we end here, I wanted to see if there's anything else you wanted to say or ask or describe. There's so many nuggets with you, and I'm so grateful again that you're here. But I don't want to leave anything unturned. You talked about your book, you talked about the retreats. Anything else going on?
Yeah. We have the spiritual retreat in October, the 2 angel Reiki schools in November and April. And then also, can I bring through a message for you?
Oh, absolutely. You're
Okay.
invited.
So your angels have been saying the entire time that jealousy is normal. Every single person feels it, right? When you look at other people and you're like, wow, I really wish I could do what they're doing. And I think that this is important for your listeners to hear now. We have to rephrase because as little girls in the 80s, 70s, 90s, 2000s, we were getting given words to use that aren't accurate. And that word jealousy your angels want to replace with they're inviting you to step up into that. So they want you to see those people where you feel that jealousy and totally reframe it within your heart, where it shouldn't be a jealousy because that's where you're going in your future. And your angels are inviting you to step up into that space. And that's what the feeling is. But because when we were younger, people told us that that feeling was bad or wrong, we learned to label it in a negative light and shame ourselves when that energy comes up. But this world is not going to get to where it needs to be with that jealousy and that fear lens as it's always been. We really have to see it as no, 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 no. This is a different feeling of love that the angels are really inviting you to step up into a different level of your life and create something very similar. Maybe not exactly, but step into that path that that other person is on. And when we follow that and reframe in that way, my God, everything can shift in our lives and we stop really the fear, I guess, within our own hearts. And we go, okay, angels, I see you calling me. How do I step into that? How do I step into that path? And for me, it was starting out with 4 different certification programs that I went through. And for you, who knows where it is? But if you just listen to your own heart and your own intuition, it's going to lead you exactly where you need to be.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and that's exactly the language I was trying to describe earlier and you've taught me this too, I was raised in a very competitive environment in lots of ways, and I'll be writing about that too. In some way, there's healthy competition and then there's comparison competition, right? And so again, in my human moments when I get stuck in the comparison game versus healthy competition and to take it a level up, like you said, which is really where I am most of the time, I've moved from feeling like I had a good idea and then you just said it. So now it's not a good idea. That's over. It's I had a good idea. You just said it. That's validation. And guess what? This is my ladle and that's yours. And we're all pulling from the same amazing pot. And there's plenty of ladles to go around, and there's plenty of pot to pull from. And my goal is with this work that I'm doing, however it's defining itself in these days and years and months and everything, is that if I can teach people to just shine their light as I choose to shine mine, as you choose to shine yours. And let's just frickin' shine. And those people who are on a lower vibration will say, stop shining so brightly because I'm in the dark. My goal is, yeah, I see you down there. That's your role. Okay. You have a choice to stay there or just try to lift up, right? I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and inspire you to do what you're doing, even if you only make it up to this point versus this point. And we're all just going on the same way. And if we can just support each other in oneness, in our unique roles, right? I choose to say unicorn. I'm the kumbaya girl. I see us all getting along, right? In this lifetime. I'm praying for it. And that's I'm not letting go of that, right? And people are gonna be like, "Ugh." I'm like, that's fine. I'm not letting go of that vision. I see it so clearly that it's not about the numbers, that you're going to get your book published, whether you have 50,000 emails or five. And the message is going to be the message. And whether it's on newsprint or print on demand through Amazon or in a glossy hardbound book from Simon and Schuster, it's the same message. And thank goodness you're going to get it out there. And I applaud you in all the ways that you do and how you help people. And I've seen your growth and your evolution just from the newsletters that I've received and just everything that you're doing, and you're moving and grooving, and don't don't let anybody
Mm,
stop you.
thank you.
So thank you. Thank you for the message too.
Of course, of course. Thank you for having me.
All right. So we're going to leave it there and I'm going to put everything in the show notes, but please tell my listeners how to find you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's the THE angelmedium.com. So theangelmedium.com. And you can go there to look at the Angel Reiki School, our membership, whatever it is that calls to you, the spiritual retreat. And we'd love to have you. I'd love to work with you if it calls to you. And on the very homepage, there's a place where if you want to, there's 31 free meditations, walks you through every day of the entire month, helping you to step into abundance, into love. And you can listen to that on repeat. It's meant to be listened to every day of the whole year. Just, yeah.
I love that. And I know you're a very busy person as well. And you do have a schedule that sometimes is open, sometimes is closed, but you've trained very capable people on your team as well. So if they can't get in to see you, that you've got a collection of other souls that can help people as well, correct?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
mentioning that. Yeah, I have a team of healers who came through my
Yeah.
Angel Reiki school and were trained. And yeah, if you go over to theangelmedium.com, there's a tab that says readings, and you can book a reading with me. We come out with new availability just based on how my voice is doing. The wait list got way too long and far in advance. And when I went on bed rest for 3 months because of my voice, I was like, I will never do that again because refunding people and getting back to people was horrendous. So we come out with new availability on the first of each month.
See, it's all a learning curve, right? I love that. And you're so honest about it. And when you're honest and I'm honest and we're authentic selves, that's what we hope inspires people, right? To be their authentic selves. So, with that, thank you again so, so much. And until next time, thank you, Julie Jancius.
Thank you so much for having me.